and welcome to Denise Guru and Zakalu, the DG and Z show. And today, I'm so excited because today we have Jason Quitt with us. And if you watched our other videos, we met him when we got with Chris Kaler and talked about the ECETI Ranch, the mecca for UFO sighting ranch. And then I found out that Jason writes books like I do. And of course I had to get his book and read it. And I got tons of notes because this is going to be such a fun talk, you guys. You're just going to love this today. So welcome, Jason. And Zakalu, can you put up his website?
Okay.
Now, Jason is referred to as a time traveler, but he's traveled the whole world. And you can tell by looking at his website. I mean, he has a plethora of knowledge. I just love that word. And so he's taken a lot of his experiences, life's experiences, present, past, maybe future, and turned them into this wonderful book. And I had to get this one too. So he's been very, very busy these past few years, and he has been all around doing talks. And I know you did Contact in the Desert. So he is quite a celebrity in this realm of work. And as you can see by his website, you can just see all the things. I mean, he gets into Tesla, which I do too. But if you go to his bio, he'll talk about how he started. And interestingly enough, it's kind of like how I started. I mean, he had dream paralysis. And I know you guys, we talk about dream paralysis a lot, those of us who have experienced this. And it was what helped him pop out of his body. And you know, I've done that when I was a very small child, and my mom would get really mad at me because that night I'd go to bed and I'd suck on 2 fingers, and then I'd rub the satin part of the blanket, and I would rub all that off. But I was able to leave my body. And so that was astral traveling a little bit for me. I was able to pop out of my body, but when I was young, I didn't realize what it was. But I also started experiencing the dream paralysis, which was very, very scary. And he talks about that in his book, amongst a million other things. So welcome, Jason. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and he's up in Canada, you guys. And he said that they just experienced a heat wave. It was 26 degrees. And we got snow today here in Colorado. So we're spoiled.
Yeah, a little higher altitude, I think it is.
I think so. Yeah, I'm at about 8,000 feet, and Zakalu, you're at 54, Aurora, 54 or 6. Yeah. So, but anyways, I guess we would like to. I just want to start right from the beginning with your dream paralysis. Because that fascinates me, because like I said, I experienced it too. And when you're talking to somebody who has experienced this, maybe you can fill them in a little bit about what actually dream paralysis is and how it affected you when it started you on your journey.
Well, first, it's actually a very common thing. And I think they estimate about 30 million Americans a year experience some form of a sleep paralysis. And the doctors will say that it's just a mechanism when you're sleeping that shuts your body off so that when you're dreaming, you're not sleepwalking or running or, because that could be very dangerous. So that would make sense. You go to sleep and your brain will shut off your body so that you're not running around. But when I started to experience it, it was completely different. I could actually start to feel something in the room with me. And this is also a very common experience that people have in sleep paralysis, is that they feel that there's something in the room with them, or something on their chest, like something climbing up on top of them, suffocating them or paralyzing them. And they just say it's a hallucination. But with me, this started to happen almost every single night, at least a couple times a week. I would go to sleep, I'd be frozen, and I started to get so sensitive to this experience that I could actually feel when it was starting to happen even before it started. And I could feel that there was a presence that would start to enter the bedroom. And as it would enter the bedroom, I can feel my body starting to go into the paralysis state. And, you know, this really freaked me out because I didn't really have any spiritual background. I didn't have a religious background. And, you know that there's something going on here that you can't explain. And some nights you would actually feel this, whatever this was, it was walking around the room. Like I can feel it moving around the room. Some nights I could feel it even sit on the bed, and the bed would actually depress where it was sitting. So you start to get very upset, very scared. And one night I couldn't take it anymore. And the strange thing about this paralysis is that the more I was put in this paralysis, the more I realized that my body was like a shell. Because you're awake inside your body and you're yelling to wake up. Like your mind is yelling to wake yourself up. But as I was in this state, I could move around inside my body. It was like I had a body within a body. And it was a very strange experience to feel that. So it's like the body became my sarcophagus. I was stuck in a body. And one night, I just couldn't take it anymore. I was so angry and upset. I was shaking violently inside my body to wake myself up. And I shook so hard that I popped out of my body. So that was I would say my first conscious outer body experience in my early 20s. And as I popped out of my body, I came up above the bed, and I could actually see myself laying in bed, which was very freaky. I was straight as a board on my back, and my eyes were open. It was very strange. And then at the foot of my bed, there was a very tall being, and the only way I could describe it is a tall shadow that looked like a hooded figure. And this really scared me because, it's one thing to feel a presence walking around the room, but when you open your physical eyes, there's nothing there. You just feel the presence. But when I was out of the body and I wasn't using my physical eyes, it was right there, clear as day, standing there. And this freaked me out so much or it scared me so much because, did I just kill myself? Am I dead? Because this was so real. Like when this happens to someone, there's no way anybody can convince themselves that this is a dream. It's beyond any type of dream there is. So it's a real experience and you're freaking out. And I just got sucked back in my body and I woke up. Heart's pounding, sweating, like, what just happened? But ever since that moment, it's almost like this door has been opened to me. And that being, or that paralysis that was put on me never happened again outside of me. Which means since that point, I was able to put myself into paralysis and leave my body. It showed me how to use that ability. So I started to play. I was so curious. I really was curious. You get a taste of something outside of you. You get a taste of another world, and it's real. And that there's more to being, there's more than just the physical world. So once you experience it, all you want to do is experience it again. So what I would do is I would go to sleep at night and I would keep my mind awake. And as I would feel my body starting to go to sleep, it enters into a paralysis state, but my mind is still awake and aware. And once I feel myself asleep, then I could start moving myself around in my body again and push myself out. And then I just started to explore. Just started to leave my body. And first it was in the bedroom. I didn't really explore outside of it. I just kind of hang out in the bedroom and just float around. It's very strange because, you know, you hear stories of people leaving their body and they say there's a silver cord. I've never seen a silver cord. They say you have like an astral body and it looks like you. You're just energy. There's no real form to it. You can try to take a form, but it's very difficult. Like I was always trying to look at my hands, but it was extremely difficult to even form the hands and look at them. And when I did, it just looked like the outline of hands with lights through it. That's all it looked like. So it's just very different than what, you know, they show in the movies or talk about. So that's when I first started to leave my body, and from there, it's just a whole other world opened up to me. But I wasn't expecting what was coming next after you make that first step.
You know, that's really interesting because I don't know if you read my mind or if I read your mind, but I was sitting here thinking about that silver cord, and I haven't thought about that in like 15 years. So you answered a question before I even brought it up. So, you know, and for me, with my experiences, it was really interesting because my last one, it was like I don't know, it was like I was in training and I was learning to control this. And the last one I had was in a little town called Trinidad, Colorado. And I was in an old hotel, and I remember the dream paralysis, the sleep paralysis hitting me. And I was like, okay, Denise, you know what to do. You just breathe and go back into your body, you know, and all that stuff. Well, and it was like, I couldn't wake up. I couldn't wake up. And I was like you. I was like, well, damn it. Am I dead? It's like, this is what it's like to be dead. This really sucks, because it was just black. But then when I was laying there, I felt this person sit next to me on the bed, and this person started rubbing my hair like this, like they were trying to calm me. Mm-hmm. And then I woke up. So that is, you know, you just took it one step further and were able to control it and just get out of your body at will. Yeah. You know, so did you ever worry about running across any astral nasties, or did you ever run across any astral nasties out there wanting to attach to you? Or
oh yeah, that's very, very common, almost everyday occurrence if you do it.
Yeah. Okay.
But you said something very interesting. I find that when there's visitation, especially if there's a visitation by a dimensional being, or let's say a spirit, if you have that sense within you already, it's an automatic response. As in, if I'm sleeping, let's say in a hotel room like you, and a being walks into the room, I have that sensitivity where right when that being walks in the room, I click into the paralysis state automatically, so that I could communicate or see what this being wants.
Okay. Okay. You know, that takes a brave person to do that, because for a long time I was really a chicken, you know, and even like with shadow beings, mm-hmm. when shadow being in the body, you know, at first I would scream and pull the covers off, but then after a while, I don't know, I realized that, so I started taking them on, you know, get out of here. You know, so they stopped visiting me. So, but yeah, that is just really interesting how you've been able
Jason,
to.
I'd be curious.
Yeah.
you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about communication, you know, it's so much information I've come across and claims that have been presented that to communicate, you know, you've got to raise your vibration or clear, you know, remove all fear and be in like this sublime state. But you're mentioning, you know, you're visited and you're struck in total fear.
Oh yeah,
Being scared, but yet you're still communicated with. So
that's right.
what are your thoughts about that?
I don't think we should hide from our emotions. I really think we shouldn't censor ourselves in that way. Fear is very important. It's our survival mechanism. If we didn't have fear, we probably wouldn't make it as a species. You know, so
Do you suppose, you know, that was like a you could look at that if you're seeing a hooded shadow and at the foot of your bed and you're seeing an imprint of somebody sitting, you know, on your bed and stuff like that. I mean, that's kind of a rational fear.
yes,
It's like seeing on the edge of the cliff about to fall or something, you know, that's a rational fear. How would you suppose irrational fears from like subconscious memories or terror or something implanted, how would that relate, those differences?
well, first of all, I would say, I would think that this was kind of almost like a training. It's the only way I could describe it. I was trained into it because I was terrified for most of them at the beginning, and you couldn't escape it. That was the thing, is that it didn't matter if you were scared; it was happening no matter what. It was out of my control, and I have this joke where I say it was scary the first 500 times. And after it happens to you so frequently, you lose that fear and you have a new emotion, which is being annoyed. So I became annoyed. So instead of having fear when they came, it didn't matter what they looked like. It didn't matter who they were. When they came into the bedroom, instead of going into fear, I would just say, "Oh, hey, how's it going? What are we doing tonight?" You know, just like totally nonchalant about it. Because
being annoyed can kind of be courageous then.
That's right.
And gave you courage.
That's right. Because, you know, when you go through this process so many times, and at the beginning it was very dramatic. And like Denise said, it was like, is she dead? Is that what dying is like? And I think it is. I think that's very much similar to near-death experience, where you're consciously choosing to leave your body. So there's an actual feeling that comes with it that's very strange. There's very strange feeling because there's a separation, sometimes accompanied by darkness and a pop. It's a very strange thing. It's a pop, and you see like a flash of light, and you're out. So it could be very scary for somebody to go through this because it's the feeling, you're not used to this feeling. You know, even today, if I go and leave my body again, you have to get used to that feeling. It's very strange. But fear, we have human beliefs that are just built into us. For example, when I left and I saw that being, which is a shadow, my first thought was, this is a Grim Reaper or a demon. You know, it's coming to take me. So I'm fearing it, right? So, and also when you're in the astral state, your emotions are amplified by 100%. So when you feel that fear, it's like heart-stopping fear, you know. But I started to learn that those fears is not something that's being projected to me by these beings. That fear existed within me regardless of this being. And it's just being exposed. So when I learned that I was the one producing this emotion, And it was because of the beliefs I held of what this experience is or should be. Once I dropped those beliefs and just, it didn't matter what the being was, it didn't matter what the experience was, I'm just going through with it with, let's say, new eyes. I'm not even thinking or asking questions, I'm just allowing the process. Once I started to do that, everything changed. Everything changed. And I learned that even that scary shadow looking thing was actually a part of myself. It was an aspect of my own consciousness. And I look at that being as an initiator. It was there. It was supposed to be there at that time in my life to awaken me to that world. That was its purpose at that time. Didn't speak to me, didn't do anything to me. It just observed and allowed me to leave my body myself. It didn't rip me out. It just allowed me to figure it out how to do it myself. And once I learned how to do it, it left. Never saw it again.
Well, you don't have to worry about going through the Anunnaki Recycling Center. They'll just bypass it.
That is true. And just remember, beliefs are a very powerful thing. So don't believe that.
Yeah.
That story reminds me of the Christmas tale. Scrooge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, where the ghosts
Yes.
come and then show him stuff, whatever.
Well, and then, when reading his book, it's like, that's what I kept thinking, especially when they started taking him, to see the what could be apocalyptic times and things. It's like, oh my gosh. So Jason, you kind of went through that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. But I didn't start out as Scrooge, though. I was perfectly normal before that.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to make that very clear.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to give kudos before we go on to Bob Mitchell. And I know Bob, he was the one that saw you at a show and was so impressed with you, and he wanted to write your book. And so, he wrote your story, and then he is now the late Bob Mitchell, which I think sounds kind of like there might have been some tampering going on there, maybe.
Yeah, he passed away very shortly after the book was released. The book was released in, I think it was in March 2016, and he passed September 2016.
Wow.
So very shortly after, and he passed away of cancer, and it wasn't detected before. So he was living with it for quite a long time. So that when he finally got the news of what it was, he only lasted about 6 weeks once he got the news. So it was a very quick and sad process, and I lost a very close friend of mine. But yeah, I have to, give him kudos, because it's almost like he just picked me up, brought me to this stage, and said, "Here you go, and goodbye. See you later, kid."
Right. Well, it's almost like you were like his last great student, and his last great works, and it's kind of like go out while we're on the top. Sometimes if you want to see it on the light side of it.
Well, he wrote many books, and this was the first book that he wrote that went to #1 on Amazon in the UFO category. So that was a big accomplishment for him. He was very happy, and at least he saw that within his lifetime. He accomplished that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we know where he is right now.
Can you tell, real quick, a bio of Bob Mitchell? What was his history? What was his credentials and stuff?
Of course. Bob Mitchell was a famous journalist in Toronto. He worked for the Toronto Star for about 35 plus years. and he retired, and he opened up another company called Toronto Newswire, which became very famous. He sold all those businesses, and he went on to freelancing and writing books. So first he wrote crime books because he was into true crime. He was always at the court documenting real cases. And then there was a lot of UFO sightings in his hometown of Brantford, Ontario. And being a journalist, he wanted to write an article about these UFO sightings. So he spoke to the local person that ran MUFON in that area. His name is Stu Bundy. And he told MUFON that he's going to go to the coffee shop one day and sit down, and people could come to the coffee shop and meet Bob Mitchell and tell him their experiences. And he didn't think anybody was going to show up. And there was a lineup around the coffee shop waiting for him to tell all their UFO experiences or out of this world experiences. And he was blown away. And he documented all these cases of experiences. And then he started to compile them and release different books. So he released Intrusions, a whole bunch of other books that I can't think of off the top of my head right now, but they were just compilations of real life experiences. And the thing about Bob was, because he was a journalist, he didn't censor anybody. It's like if you told him a story word for word, he would present it in that way without any objections. And there's a lot of stories that he wrote down that even if you interviewed him, he would say, I don't believe that at all. He said, that's just way out there. I don't believe it. It doesn't make sense. But he still wrote it in the book exactly the way they told it so that other people will read it and enjoy it. And he became very popular in the UFO scene because of these books. And he was on the radio almost every single night on different shows, especially Coast to Coast and Fade to Black and some of the bigger shows. So when he found me at an expo and he heard me speak, originally I was supposed to be part of his compilations. So I'd be in a book with, let's say, 20 other stories. But when I started to speak to him, he realized that he just needed to focus on me and make that a whole book just with me. And because of that, we became this kind of dynamic duo. We were on the radio in the 6 months that he was alive. I think me and him did over 100+ radio shows, almost every night. Sometimes 2 days or 2 shows a day, doing shows with Bob. So we really put it out there, and then the book just went everywhere. In fact, this month in October, Forbidden Knowledge is being released in China. This month it's being released in Japan. Right now they're translating it into German, and they're translating it into French right now. So it's just actually the start of this information getting out there, which I find very exciting. It's very exciting to have this kind of spread all over the place. And it just goes to show you that when you're speaking from the heart, when you're sharing your true experiences, it hits a chord with people and it spreads. You know, people talk about this information. So, the radio interviews help and everything, but I think Bob really allowed people to share in a world that believes this is very taboo to speak about these type of things. And he actually chose the title of the book, which is Forbidden Knowledge. So, and he chose the book, the name Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler, because when I would tell Bob my stories about leaving my body and then, going to different timelines and seeing different things, he just turned to me and said, he goes, "Oh, so you're a multidimensional time traveler." And I never thought of that before. So he's responsible for all those things.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. That sounds like a gratuitous event for sure. Denise?
Well, what people can't see when Jason is sitting down is how tall he is. You're over 6 feet tall, aren't you, Jason?
Yeah, about 6'5".
Yeah. So, and you had a really tough growing up years. I mean, you had a lot of illnesses, and you know, you talk about your IBS, and you had a couple near-death experiences. I think one of your near-death experiences was with Akhenaten, the living. But you had one prior to that, or what? Or did you? I don't know. Maybe I read wrong. You've just been through so much.
So
I don't know. What do you attribute to that to?
I would say they say that a lot of people who are starseeds or sensitives, they have a very tough time being in this type of earth environment. The food doesn't work for us. The air doesn't work for us. The EMF doesn't work for us. It's almost like we're living on a foreign planet and we're trying to adapt. So it's very difficult for us. And I would say growing up, I wasn't as conscious as I should be. You know, if I was going out for food, fast food would be, you know, that's normal. You know, we're not conscious about things being bad for us, especially growing up. And I would say I hit puberty very fast, and I had a growth spurt very fast. I was like a football player. I was like 6'4", 6'5". I was taller than my teachers in elementary school. And I was like 220 pounds. I was like big, like thick, you know. And then when I hit high school, the opposite happened. I started to lose the weight like crazy, and I got down to about 150 pounds. You know, on a 6'5" frame, you know, and it doesn't look very good. But what I had all my life was a condition called IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And I would definitely have to attribute it to nutrition and what we eat growing up, and, you know, growing up on the wrong foods. That obviously killed my stomach. But, you know, when you go to the doctor just says, you just have stress. There's nothing you can do. It's just stress. But I was basically dying because I couldn't eat anything. Anything I ate made me violently ill. And I was losing weight. You know, there's some pictures I look at where I just can't look at them. It's very, it hurts me to look at those pictures because you can see the bones sticking out of my body. And I also had problems with learning. I couldn't read or write. You know, if I got a project in school, I would just pick the book that had the movie, you know, to get away with that. And I was also dyslexic, and I stuttered. So especially in high school, I started to stutter more, and I would just repeat the same word. It was almost like a nervous stutter. And this was just the normal me. It was just the normal me. I didn't think I could change. I was just comfortable with who I was. That's who I was. And it wasn't until I started having these experiences, these outer body experiences, that's when I started to get information and get taught that I needed to heal myself, that there is something wrong energetically, and I was given tools to use to work on myself. And when I started to listen to them, because, you know, the doctors weren't helping me, you know, it was either you get medication or it's stress or there's nothing they can do. So I got virtually no help from doctors. But when I started to leave my body, these beings would communicate with me that I needed to do certain things. And when I started to do that, that's when my life started to turn around and I started to get better.
Well, where are some of those?
You know, it's.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Denise. Well, where are some of those tools?
No, I was just going to say, you know, for people are.
Some of those tools were, well, first they started to teach me about the environment. So that was one of the first teachings. It was about the food we eat is toxic, the water we drink is toxic and dead, and there's chemicals in them. And then they started to teach about EMF and environmental issues. And this was at a time before YouTube. You know, so when I would get these messages, I'd go on, I think it was AOL or Yahoo back then. And I would search these things out on the web, and I found it amazing that I could find people discussing these topics from what I'm receiving. So it was a good confirmation for me, because back then I didn't really have anybody to turn to about this type of information. I was just kind of stuck with it. And then the big step that was taken was after the nutrition, because, you know, nutrition is the basis of everything. So after you learn about the food and the nutrition and how to nutrify yourself, after that, they said, you need to learn Qigong. So I started to study a Chinese system of Qigong called Qi Lao. And I studied that for many years, actually. And I practiced it a couple times a day, nonstop, didn't miss a day. And it took about a year of practicing Qigong until I could actually feel energy. So it was like a switch turned on after about a year of Qigong, where suddenly I can feel energy, and it was very, very real to me. So I started to feel energy going through my body. I could start to feel energy in my environment. If I would eat the wrong food, I can feel the acupuncture points on my body start to go into pain. And then I could know which organs and which meridians are affected by this type of food. So I started to become almost my own teacher, where I knew what would hurt me and what would heal me. And then I just started to build off of that. And then in 2007, I'll show you these because I have them here right now. So these are cylinders, shungite and soapstone rods. And in 2007, I was at a health show, and I walked by a booth, and they were selling these cylinders. And when they handed them to me, when I first put them in my hands, I can feel like a fire being ignited in my stomach. And I know that feeling well. It's what happens when I do Qigong for a long time. It's just like getting the energy kickstarted, I guess. But holding these really amplified that effect and feeling. So I purchased these, and I went home and I started to meditate with these cylinders. And that's when I started to be taken at night in the astral world, and I'd be taken back to Egypt. And this is where I was taught a different type of Qigong, which I'll just call the Egyptian postures. And Denise has that book too over there. Yeah. And so at nighttime, I'd be taken to this temple, and I'd be standing in this temple, and there would be an Egyptian master standing in front of me, and they wouldn't talk to me. They would just stand there holding a posture. And all I would do is stand in front of them and copy whatever they were doing. And as that happened, it felt like something would open up above my head, and all this energy, it felt like solar energy, like photons, like a waterfall of photons going through my body. And it was such a powerful experience that I would document these postures of what they were teaching me. And then I have a cousin named Sandra Arnold, and she's a Qigong instructor, actually, and a very powerful psychic and clairvoyant. So I went to her with this information. I said, this is what's been happening to me. This is what I've been receiving. And she channeled and worked through with me which order these need to be in. So we created this system that was given to me from these travels. And when I started to practice these postures, I found a profound change in my energy. And what Qigong is just the movement and building of energy. So it moves the energy, builds the energy, and releases the energy. That's all Qigong is. And when you practice Qigong, what you're doing is you're sensitizing yourself to your own energy, your own things that you carry, and things that are not supposed to be there. So you could be practicing Qigong or any type of Qigong, and you may start to experience pain or illness or something like this, and it's because the energy is exposing and showing you what shouldn't be there. So in Qigong, they always say just work through it. So just continue doing the Qigong, and it will drain that energy back to the earth or the sky. So that's what I practiced, and you get a very powerful spiritual muscle, I'll say, because I needed that Qigong energy. I needed that strength to do what I did in the astral world, to do what I did when you leave your body, because there are things out there that love you so much, they want to attach to you. You know, they want to take your energy. They connect to you through the wounds that you carry. They connect to you through the fears and thoughts and emotions that you carry. And if you have a weak energy field, it's very easy to be manipulated or taken over by other energies. It's very easy. So to strengthen your energy, when you go over there, you have this kind of spiritual muscle where you have more control, that they cannot influence you or attach to you. So I think that is the real purpose for me, is what that Qigong did for me.
You know, that's how I started out, was learning. I took a workshop in Denver, a Qigong workshop, and then I went into Reiki, learning Reiki. And I know there's a lot of controversy out there about Reiki energy, you know. And I always thought it was just a learning. It was a basis for me to, you know, further learn what is already within myself. But I noticed when I was doing your postures, you know, and like you, I've learned to feel the energy, you know, and when one of the postures, I don't remember what it was, but when my hands were going out, I could feel all the layers of the energy, you know, when there was a thicker spot or a thinner spot, or, you know,
Yes.
And the water balancer one it was really interesting when I was doing the water balancer, because I was a little wobbly before that. And when I did the water balance, it was like my legs just rooted in the ground, and I became very strong. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, and you know, our bodies are built a certain way. It follows the math of the universe. Basically, our bodies are sacred geometry, and our bones are calcium and silica and phosphorus, and we're basically walking oscillators of energy. We're transmitters of frequencies. We create electromagnetic fields just by having the blood, which has iron in it, run through our body. It creates magnetic fields. So when you're actually standing in a posture or doing a posture, what you're doing is you're changing the way energy moves through your body. So if your body is made up of all these different energy fields, if you know which posture corrects these energy fields and you do it, what you're doing is you're strengthening and realigning your natural energy fields. And I told you earlier that I had dyslexia and I had the stuttering and all these things. When I did the Qigong, those went away. And the only thing I can think of is that my energy fields, especially the energy fields of my mind, had distortions in them.